brace, string, end angle brace, list name, variable, is equal to new array list. You don't have to put anything inside the diamond there. It doesn't know what an array list is, so we could go and add the import by hand, or we could do add import for java.util.ArrayList. All right, let's append 3 items to the end of the list. So al.add and al.add Bob, al.add Chris. Now let's insert 3 items into the beginning of the list. You still use .add, you just specify the index value. al.add 0, Doug. al.add 0, Eric. And al.add 0, Frankie. Now let's print the list. For each string s colon in the array list, system.out.print line s. Bless you. So we run it. Key last. U2. U3. Really? Really? Alrighty. You run it and it says Frankie, Eric, Doug, and Bob, Chris. The reason it's in that funny order is we appended and Bob and Chris, but then we started inserting values into the beginning. Doug, Eric, Frankie. So let's write some functions that will do a push onto a fake stack that we're going to make. It won't be a fake once we're done with it. And we'll pop from it. And as we said here, if you're using a stack, you're doing your insertions and your removes from the same end. So let's actually play with encapsulation. We haven't done much of that. We've been avoiding the idea of making our own classes, but we can do this. Go over here to projects, or however you're going to make your new Java file. Right click on the source folder, do new Java class, and just call it my stack. An acknowledgement that we're not using the stack class that's part of the Java distribution. It's going to be a stack full of strings, so we need an array list of strings to play with. Let's make it private so that the only way to add or remove data from it is through our methods. ArrayList string, we're just going to call it st for stack, is equal to new ArrayList. So as soon as they create a myStack object, it will initialize, it will create, and it will declare and allocate an array list. Again, I have to do the add import for java.util.ArrayList. We want 2 methods. We want a .push method that will append something to the stack, and we want or to the beginning. We can pick which end we want to deal with, and we want a .pop, which will remove that item from the stack. So dot push doesn't need to return anything. It can be void. But pop needs to return a string. Let's just declare those before we code them. Private void push takes a string. And then private void pop, it's not void because it's actually going to return a string. So private string pop, but it doesn't take any parameters. We're not passing any data in, we're trying to get data out of it. And for now I'm just going to add return null, just so that it'll compile, if I ever tried to. Okay, so we need to pick an end. I'm not sure which end you'll think would be easier to manipulate on our array list to simulate our stack. Do we want to add and remove everything from the beginning of the list at item 0? Or do we want to add and remove everything from the end of the list? I have an opinion. Anybody else care? It doesn't really matter. The only reason I'm going to say do it from the beginning of the list is that if we do things from the end of the list, occasionally we'll have to manipulate, the item number. We'll have to use the list, the length of the list minus 1 or whatever, and it's just easier to always specify 0. Okay, so when we push something, we have a piece of data that we want to add to our list, so we're going to insert it. How do we insert something into the beginning of our list? st.add. Then what do we do here between the parentheses in order to insert it rather than do an append?
0, comma.
Yeah, 0, comma, and the string that we're passing in. I guess we could be awesome and print a message saying pushed plus the string. Kind of a debug message. Now popping is a little bit more complicated. Why? Because what happens if you pop and the stack is empty? We can't just willy-nilly going and try accessing element 0 if it doesn't exist. So we're going to have to check to see if the array list is empty. And if it is, then bail out as soon as possible so we don't mess anything up. So if stack dot, we could either do is empty or dot size equals 0. I think I'll do dot size equals 0. Dot size parentheses in parentheses is equal to 0. Just return a null. Return nothing. We could return an empty string, but let's just return a null. Now, if that's not the case, then we're going to get the first element out, and then we're going to remove it. So string s, how do we get the first element out of the stack? We use .add to put data in. How do we get data back out? Notice I keep using the word get. We use the .get method, and we specify the index value. So since we've been inserting into the beginning of the list, and a stack requires us to add and remove data from the same side, we're going to get our data from the beginning of the list. Once we've got it, we need to delete it. It's no longer supposed to be in the stack. So st.remove that element, and then return s. All right, we have our stack class. May even work. There's some other stuff we probably ought to add to it. There's a whole bunch of stuff you could add to it, but the idea is just to burn into our brains what the stack is. Let's go back to our main method and use that class. So back over here, we're going to declare an object of myStack. MyStack, I'm just going to call it my, is equal to new myStack. The capitalization has to all be correct. We didn't need any of this diamond business, the greater and less than stuff, because that's all encapsulated inside the myStack class. Now let's push 3 items onto the stack. My.push. Let's see, we were up to F, G, George. My.push, H. Howie. I'm getting errors. Probably because I forgot to make those methods public. Yep. Go back to the MyStack class and make the push and the pop methods public. Don't know what I was thinking. That ought to work. My.push h. Give me a name that starts with I.
Ida.
Ida. Ida, no. There we go. Now let's pop those three things. Let's just declare three strings. N1, N2, N3. N1 is equal to my.pop. N2 is equal to my.pop. N3 is equal to my.pop. Then let's print them out. System.out.println N1 plus a space plus N2 plus a space plus N3. And then just for giggles, I'm going to do N4 is equal to my.pop. And print it out. That should say null. We didn't have any data. Oh, I forgot to declare string N4. So in front of N4 equals my.pop, string N4. All right, hopefully it will print these names in the opposite order in which they were inserted. George, Howie, and Ida. So we pushed George, we pushed Howie, we pushed Ida, but then we popped them off. We got Ida, Howie, and George. Now I put debug print statements in the push, and I forgot to put the debug print statements in the pop, but that's okay. We really don't want debug print statements in our finished code anyway, so we'd go and comment it out.